Following on this week's Life Healthcare cyber attack, the issue of cybersecurity has once again been brought to the fore as businesses and individuals are forced to evaluate whether measures are in place are strong enough to withstand major breaches in their security. With businesses adapting to working online amid the coronavirus pandemic and the subsequent lockdowns, is there an uncontrollable emergence of cyber threats? Joining us to discuss how inadequate investment in cybersecurity can result in detrimental cyber attacks is Territory Account Manager for the SADC region at Checkpoint, Miguel De Freitas. Miguel, thank you very much for joining us on the program.
Thank you, and good morning to yourself and your viewers across the continent.
Now, Miguel, surely what happened to the Life Health is not unique. What can we learn from this?
Yes, that's correct. It's an unfortunate event. Cyber criminals are exploiting the COVID-19 global pandemic, and we're seeing a huge spike in cyber attacks, not only globally, because we are a global technology vendor, but they are now trickling onto the continent. And yes, they're not unique, yeah, it's an unfortunate occurrence, but Checkpoint, we are here to support customers and companies that are being targeted.
Miguel, let's track back a bit. When COVID-19 kicked off, we saw many customers in Europe being targeted. Africa has also followed closely behind as we are now starting to see those attacks reach our continent. Tell us what leads to such threats.
Yes, so basically we've seen these threats. They're hitting the news and media streams, so like the likes of Life Healthcare and other big corporates on the continent that have reported this. So basically it's inadequate spend around cybersecurity. We are facing generation 5 and 6 cybersecurity attacks. So companies are not equipped at that level, or not many of them. The global average of businesses are only protected up to between generation 2 and generation 3 of cybersecurity. So they're only at that posture level, and that's why sophisticated attacks like we've seen in the last week infiltrate these organizations.
Can we also expect this trend to continue if companies use similar technologies to those that have already been breached?
Most definitely. The likes of Life Healthcare, as we've discussed, those are the ones that hit the news. But there's definitely hundreds, we see hundreds of companies across the continent that obviously in the small and medium business space, and these attacks are happening all the time, unfortunately.
So Life Healthcare is the third major South African company that has been targeted by hackers this year. In February, Nedbank warned that the information of about 1.7 million clients were potentially affected by a data breach. Amongst the other big businesses that have been targeted in South Africa are Johannesburg City Council, Capitec, amongst others, and Telkom. Is there a trend here? Are we seeing trends?
It certainly is a trend, but it's also opportunistic. Remember, the cybercriminal fraternity is highly sophisticated and targeted. It's in these cases with Life Healthcare, they're exploiting the COVID-19 global pandemic, which is unfortunate, but there certainly is a trend, and even across the continent. In Kenya, the IFMS, Integrated Financial Management System of the country, was targeted. So it's also geopolitical, which is a serious concern and a serious call to action for the continent.
So given these problems, one would assume that companies would probably spend more money to protect their network.
So I would say that is a problem. One should spend and look and think out the box and not just look to traditional security approaches. So we could always do better in our personal capacity and in a corporate business capacity. So we encourage organizations to engage their strategic security vendors like Checkpoint. Let's build a roadmap. Let's look at your infrastructure, and let's get you to a more sophisticated security posture. As I said, we're facing generation 5 and 6 cyber attacks, and the general average of companies are only protected to generation 2 and 3, which is a huge gap.
So, Miguel, tell us a bit more about what your company offers. What do you do?
Great. So, Checkpoint, we are one of the largest cybersecurity vendors on the planet. We've been in the space for a very long time, 27 years. We're a pioneer in the space. But we very much have a very strong African team. I'm part of the Southern African team, based in Johannesburg, South Africa, covering SADC. We've got a strong East African team covering East Africa, based in Kenya. We've got a Nigerian team covering West Africa, and we've got a French and North Africa team based in Morocco. So besides our global reach and global innovation, we're very much a diverse African team that's ready to secure the continent and secure business.
So, Miguel, considering the many attacks surfacing, attackers can now get into environments a lot easier and quicker. What must businesses do to block such threats?
Certainly, it's very easy these days, especially with the sophistication that cyber criminals are moving with. So, basically, if we look at it, and just a general example, organizations will protect their corporate perimeter with a firewall. They'll have antivirus protection, but almost a blind spot, and this is one area, there's many blind spots, but almost a blind spot in a general corporate network is mobile phones. So if someone in your organization is, and today we all have, the general population has smartphones, we connect to our corporate networks and other networks, and we can actually bring very sophisticated pieces of malware onto the network, and they can move laterally and infiltrate the network and bypass the security controls in place. So at Checkpoint, we look at a cybersecurity architecture, and we cover not only your network perimeter, your endpoint, but we also cover your mobile devices connecting to the network, as well as cloud security. Because cloud is obviously a big business driver at the moment. So yes, extremely sophisticated attacks can virtually come in at blind spots that aren't often considered, and those vulnerabilities are infiltrated, and that's where we hear the likes of some of the organizations that have been hacked in recent times.
So, Miguel, considering that more companies are having their staff working from home, are we seeing more cyber threats? Absolutely.
So just by virtue of the fact of working at home, the corporate perimeter, so to speak, has moved. So definitely, working from home, you're more vulnerable. You are on your home network, and you're still connecting to corporate assets. So most certainly, it's definitely a risk, and it's definitely an area that business needs to relook at and build a strategy around that.
And are there any tips for individuals to try and protect their own networks?
Absolutely. So it's always to have a market-leading antivirus on your endpoints. Make sure that you have a reputable, you're with a reputable ISP, and have a reputable connection in your house and home, VPN, all of those elements. And also just going back to basics. The human element is often forgotten, and companies and organizations need to create that cyber awareness to prevent breaches and so forth. So there's those are some of the basics. And at Checkpoint, we're in a privileged situation to cover consumers, large corporates, small and medium business. We can certainly help that call to action.
Well, Miguel, thank you very much for your time. That's Miguel De Freitas, the Territory Account Manager at SADC Checkpoint. He's been speaking about live healthcare having been hit by hackers this week.